Today we are going to talk about Indo-European family of languages. Indo-European languages account for about 449 languages and dialects spoken by more than 3,500,000,000 people, roughly half of the world population, including most of the major languages belonging to language branches and groups of Europe, Western and Southern Asia, which belong to a single language family. Hence, Indo-European family is the most prominent language family in the world by some mother tongue speakers. The Indo-European family involves the majority of the contemporary European languages except for Hungarian, Turkish, Finnish, Estonian, Basque, Maltese, and Sami. Asia, except for its east and southeast, until the ancient Turkic and Mongol invasions, also presented the Indo-European family. Predominant in ancient Anatolia, present-day Turkey, the ancient Tarim Basin, present-day northwest China, and most of Central Asia. Let's talk about each of branch individually. The first one is Anatolian, spoken during the 1st and 2nd millennia BC in present Asian Turkey and northern Syria. Hittite was the best known official language of the Hittite Empire, flourished in the 2nd millennial. Before 1906, few Hittite texts were not known. Moreover, they were not interpreted as Indo-European until 1915. The integration of Hittite into Indo-European comparative grammar was, therefore, one of the principal developments of Indo-European studies in the XX century. The most ancient Hittite texts date from the 17th century BC, whereas the latest ones, from approximately 13th century BC. The second branch is Indo-Iranian. It is subdivided into sub-branches, Indic and Iranian, predominant in India, Pakistan, Iran, and its vicinity, and also in areas from the Black Sea to western China today. Sanskrit, which belongs to the Indic sub-branch, is the best known among the early languages of this branch. Its oldest variety, Vedic Sanskrit, is preserved in the Vedas, a collection of hymns and other religious texts of ancient India. Indic speakers entered into the Indian subcontinent, coming from Central Asia around 1500 BC. In the Rig Veda, the hymn 131 speaks about a legendary journey, considered as a distant memory of this migration. The next branch is Greek. Rather than a branch of languages, Greek is a group of dialects. During more than 3,000 years of written history, Greek dialects never evolved into mutually incomprehensible languages. Greek was predominant in the southern end of the Balkans, the Peloponnese Peninsula, and the Aegean Sea and its vicinity. The earliest surviving written evidence of a Greek language is Mycenaean, the dialect of the Mycenaean civilization, mainly found on clay tablets and ceramic vessels on the Isle of Crete. Now we will talk about the Italic branch. This branch was predominant on the Italian peninsula. The Italics, who crossed the Alps to enter Italy and gradually moved southward around 1000 BC, were not natives of Italy. Latin, the best-known language of the group, was originally a somewhat minor local language, spoken by pastoral tribes that lived in small agricultural settlements in the center of the Italian peninsula. The first Latin inscriptions appeared in the 7th century BC and then spread significantly by the 6th century BC. Celtic branch splits into two sub-branches, Continental Celtic and Insular Celtic. By about 600 BC, Celtic-speaking tribes had spread from what we know today as southern Germany, Austria, and western Czech Republic in almost all directions, to France, Belgium, Spain, and the British Isles. Then, by 400 BC, they also moved southward into northern Italy and southeast into the Balkans and even beyond. During the early 1st century BC, Celtic-speaking tribes dominated a very significant portion of Europe. In 50 BC, Julius Caesar conquered Gaul, ancient France, but, about a century later, the Emperor Claudius conquered Britain. Consequently, this sizable Celtic-speaking area became Romanized, but Latin became the dominant language that caused the disappearance of the continental Celtic languages, the main of which was Gaulish. The Germanic branch is divided into 3 sub-branches. 1. East Germanic that not extinct. 2. North Germanic that involves Old Norse, the ancestor of all modern Scandinavian languages. 3. West Germanic that includes Old English, Old Saxon, and Old High German. The earliest evidence of Germanic-speaking people dates back to the first half of the first millennium BC. They inhabited an area stretching from southern Scandinavia to the coast of the northern Baltic Sea. During prehistoric times, the Germanic-speaking tribes contacted with Finnic speakers in the north and with Balto-Slavic tribes in the east. Such an interaction caused borrowing several terms from Finnish and Balto-Slavic by the Germanic language. The origins of the Armenian-speaking people is a topic still unclear. The Armenians and the Phrygians are supposed to belong to the same migratory wave that entered Anatolia, coming from the Balkans around the late 2nd millennium BC. The Armenians settled in an area around Lake Van, currently Turkey. This region belonged to the state of Urartu during the early 1st millennium BC. In the 8th century BC, Urartu came under Assyrian control, and in the 7th century BC, the Armenians took over the region. The Medes absorbed the region soon after, and Armenia became a vassal state. During the time of the Achaemenid Empire, the region turned into a Persian satrapy. The Persian domination had a strong linguistic impact on Armenian, which misleads many scholars in the past to believe that Armenian belonged to the Iranian group. The history of the Tocharian-speaking people is still mysterious. One only knows that they lived in the Taklamakan Desert in western China. Most of the Tocharian texts with nothing about the Tocharians themselves involve just translations from well-known Buddhist works and dated between the 6th and the 8th BC. 2 different languages belong to this branch, Tocharian and Tocharian B. Remains of the Tocharian A language have only been found in places where Tocharian B documents have also been found, which would suggest that Tocharian A was already extinct, kept alive only as a religious or poetic language, while Tocharian B was the living language used for administrative purposes. Balto-Slavic splits into 2 sub-branches, Baltic and Slavic. During the Late Bronze Age, the Balts territory may have stretched from around western Poland all the way across to the Ural Mountains. Afterward, the Balts occupied a small region along the Baltic Sea. Those in the northern part of the territory occupied by the Balts closely contacted with Finnic tribes, whose language was not part of the Indo-European language family. Finnic speakers borrowed a considerable amount of Baltic words, which suggests that the Balts had an essential cultural prestige in that area. The last branch of Indo-European languages is Albanian that appeared in written form. The origin of Albanian involves 2 hypotheses. According to the first, Albanian is a modern descendant of Illyrian, widely spoken in the region during classical times. Since linguists hardly ever know about Illyrian, no one can either deny or confirm it from a linguistic standpoint. However, from a historical and geographical perspective, it makes sense. Another version makes Albanian be a descendant of Thracian, another lost language, spoken farther east than Illyrian. Today Albanian is spoken in Albania as the official language, in several other areas of the former Yugoslavia, and also in small enclaves in southern Italy, Greece, and the Republic of Macedonia. Here come the sources used for this lecture. Thank you for your attention.